Hi, everybody. We're here. We've got 5 great panelists today, all talking about China going global and China business and the Chinese consumer. So to get started, I'm just going to welcome everybody to the stage. To start off, we have Margaret Wong. She's president and CEO of the California Center, and she'll be coming out in just a moment. After that, we'll have William Bao Bean right here. He's general partner of SOSV. Here's Margaret right here. Next is Edith Yeung, partner of 500 Startups. Next we have Henry Xiao, Vice President of Strategic Development at Mattel. And then Isabel Gunn, Independent Advisor for China. All right, so we have a fantastic panel here. We're trying to talk about the Chinese consumer in 25 minutes with 5 panelists. We've got a lot to get through. They're going to tell you everything that you need to know about doing business in China. We're going to get started with Henry Xiao. Mattel right now is currently a market leader in the toy space in China, but obviously they haven't had a chance to just take what they do in the US and adapt that to China directly. So Henry, I guess as you're looking at the Chinese consumer market, what are some of the things that you found that are kind of unique about Chinese consumers and some of the unique preferences that they have?
Sure. Mic's on, okay. Great question. I think a little bit of context, Mattel is world's leading toy company, owns brands like Fisher-Price, Barbie, Hot Wheels, Thomas the Train, Mega, American Girl. They've been in China for over a decade easily, and we are actually the market leader for the toy category. The last 18 months, I think the company's really focused a lot on growing that market substantially for our business. And although we're the market leader in the space, it's a highly fragmented and highly competitive landscape there. And I think toys, we realize has a strong foothold, but also relative to wallet share and time spent, there are other categories that are adjacent to toys that were very good opportunities for our business. One of those that we focused a lot on is around learning and development. And honestly, I think one of our brands fits very well, and we believe that's Fisher-Price. That brand has been around 80+ years, and it's always been around child development and learning. And all those products have been developed from the ground up with a lot of research and a lot of attention to detail around child development. So in China, the story was really to reframe the category for us a bit, to less just about toys and play, more about the benefits of play and that it drives learning and development. In China, based off of our analysis at least, the toy category is about $8 billion, and learning and development is about $30+ billion. So for us, the category size is much bigger. So a lot of our work there has been done around educating the consumer, one, about the brand and its 80 years of heritage around safety, quality, and the trust that it instills with parenting, but 2, around the benefits of that brand, and that it's not just play and parenting products, but it's infused with learning and development, and there's a curriculum and there's a ton of content behind that. So that's been our focus the past 18 months in market, and taking that brand and then the go-to-market strategy behind that has evolved quite a bit too, as the consumers are obviously highly mobile savvy and dependent. Our strategies are evolving to be on those platforms such as WeChat, leveraging KOLs to really tell that story in an authentic manner and a meaningful way that they can consume.
Excellent. And I think kind of what you just talked about around technologies lends really well to Edith's expertise. At 500 Startups, you obviously invest in a lot of very big companies that are trying to invest in the China market and new technologies for the Chinese consumer. I guess what are some of the things that you're really excited about that you're seeing in China in terms of new technologies for the consumer market?
I think one of the things I want to point out that every time I have some Chinese friends visiting me in Silicon Valley, they will ask me things like, why do people still pay in cash and credit card? If you go and visit China, I think there's a few things for sure that apply to the whole population, which is everybody absolutely on WeChat. Even my mom is on WeChat. So that means that, definitely this is number one way of connecting with anyone. And if you actually use email in China, it's really, really strange to them. And then everyone use either Alipay or WeChat Pay to pay for everything. And in fact, the funniest thing, I was actually in Hangzhou 2 weeks ago, and one of my colleagues wanted to use cash, and the cashier looked at her literally stunned for 2 minutes. He's like, I don't know how to handle this. Because everyone, really, like even you go shopping in a grocery store, they're very, very happy to take mobile payment. Didi, which is the Uber of China, everybody takes Didi. And on top of that, if you go to any major cities in China, you see bikes everywhere, which is all the bike sharing in various different color, of course, mainly lead by Mobile and Ovo. Having said that, these are just how normal people live, right? And there's a lot of really cool, super interesting things that sort of build on top of these platforms. But I want to sort of go back to education. As very, very excited to have my friends from Mattel previously and now. And some of the things that we talk a lot about, which I'm always really, really excited, is if you think about it, Chinese online learners is over 140 million people. And there's more university graduate in China, more than US plus Europe combined. So there's a lot of people that wanted to go online and learn, regardless of what ages. And they're willing to spend, and which is unlike 5 or 10 years ago. You think that a lot of these content is pirated copies, but that's so not the case anymore. A lot of the Chinese users are willing to pay for content. And companies like iQIYI is basically the Netflix of China. I think now they have about at least 20 million subscribers paying, if not more. So there's a lot of super interesting, I think, platforms that more and more startups can build on top of this. And I just feel like China is so efficient in terms of building operations compared to the US. It's not as fragmented as it used to be before.
Great, and I think, William, you've been in the Chinese tech sector for a while, and I think one of the things that's already come up twice now is just this idea of WeChat and the fact that this app is kind of everything in China. So can you just tell us what's the deal with WeChat and why is it so important?
So WeChat is a platform that allows you to basically do every single service that you would do in the US on separate platforms on one platform. So you can not only communicate with your friends, you communicate with your colleagues, you run your business on it, you can buy a house or a car on it, you can get a ride, you can book a bicycle or a taxi. It's a sort of a one platform that does everything. And you see companies like Facebook, they're maybe 18 to 24 months behind. And if you look at their product roadmap and you see the types of applications and services that Facebook is rolling out, they are a copy of WeChat. So usually in the US, you're like, oh, we're ahead. And with a lot of technologies from financial services to communication to media, increasingly on the consumer side at least, the US companies are behind. I'll give you a couple examples. So language learning is a pretty big deal all around the world. And I hear a lot of people are putting their kids into Chinese language learning programs for some reason in the US. But we have a company that uses machine learning, basically artificial intelligence, to create a chatbot teaching assistant for a teacher. So chatbots by themselves suck. But if you put it next to an actual live teacher, it can be quite effective. And so we have a platform that started off doing one-on-one language learning lessons on WeChat. And you can do the same thing on Facebook. And that one-on-one lesson with the chatbot assistant becomes a two-on-one lesson. So a teacher can do 2 one-on-one lessons at the same time. And after about a week and a half, 2 weeks, one teacher could do 5 one-on-one lessons at the same time. And when while the one student is working on one problem, the teacher can be answering another one. But as those questions are very repetitive, the chatbot learns the answers to a lot of the questions and can answer for the teacher. So after about 2 months, we had one teacher doing simultaneous one-on-one language learning lessons with 239 students at the same time. So you can get a one-on-one lesson for 15 renminbi, which is about $2.20. This starts in China, but can go global. Another company also uses machine learning to collect data around pricing. So about 40% of all luxury spend in the world supposedly is Chinese consumers. 60% of that is outside of China. Why? Because the prices are high in China. So if you go to a Chinese high-end luxury store, it's a little funny, but you will not find any inventory. You can't actually buy anything. It's a showroom, but there's no actual stock in it because people buy outside. So we created one of our companies created a price scraping platform, and we track 140,000 SKUs, luxury products, LV or Hermes, from all around the world, and we're tracking real-time new and used pricing for each of these products across 19 countries. So basically, you can figure out, okay, this is a rose gold submariner from Rolex, and in Beijing it costs $24,000, but in New York it costs $14,000, and you can click reserve and fly to New York, basically for free, and pick it up, or you can press buy, and we'll verify that it's real and send it to you. So we're probably the first and only platform in China selling $15,000 handbags on a chat app. Hermes Birkin bags, and we're selling about one a week.
Wow, and I think there's a lot that's really gaining traction first in China and then expanding internationally. And I think one of the things is a lot of the internet technology companies that we see, you hear a lot about BAT or Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent. And when it comes to doing business with these companies in China, partnerships are key, and that's why I wanted to turn over to Isabel to talk about some of the work that she was doing in the corporate development capacity and really what it takes to build a successful partnership in China, because it probably isn't easy.
Your mic's off. I think it's better now.
It's better now. Great. So I used to work in Mattel, and I was actually with Henry and our Chief Development Officer's leadership. We built a couple of great strategic partnerships with Alibaba, Tencent, JD, and also built 2 joint ventures in China, covering retail and also child development. That's basically what we did for the last 2 years when we basically go back to China every month and stay there for 2 weeks, come back, jet-lagged, and then get ready to go again. So back to the question about what is the key how to get to the success of the partnership in China. The panel probably can talk about 2 hours nonstop, but I have summarized 4 points for the audience for the sake of time here. The first thing that any company want to go to China is to find a partner there. The key thing is to really think through what you need, and also what is most expensive and difficult to get if it's not through commercial partnership. The reason why is if you think through what you really need, then you will actually have a short list of companies you can go to. But then at the same time, if you really think about what is the most expensive to get, and then you can use certain strategic partnerships to have the partner do it for you versus have to pay through a commercial partnership. And this one of the reasons why we did the partnership with the Baby Tree, which has the biggest mom community in China or even the world. When we put our content platform on them, if we really have to pay for it, it's probably, I don't know, millions of dollars, but with the partnership, the partner can do much better with the content we put on it, and also it's a more strategic partnership versus just a buy and sell commercial partnership. That's the first point. The second point is think about what you really have, like what they really need from you. And there's 2 benefits of thinking through that. Is one, if you think about what you really have, and also then you will have much better leverage in negotiations. And everybody knows that it's really hard to negotiate against Chinese players, especially the best and the best in the sectors like Tencent, like Alibaba, right? So that's one. 2, also, then you can know what really you need to control. And this goes into the third point is the control issue. Like if you really want to be successful in China, let the partner who you trust has more control so they can build up the business versus a foreign company trying to navigate everything, regulations, marketplaces, and also all of those complexity to try to be successful when a lot of companies actually already failed in China. And then this leads to the fourth issue, which is trust. So in Chinese, there is one phrase says, 疑人不用，用人不疑. I know the Chinese probably understand this, meaning that if you don't trust this person, don't work with them. But once you're working with them, you have to trust them. And that's that's something that we found very essential when we talk with the companies, especially startup companies in China. And then lastly is also building upon the trust issue is also something like if you are negotiating with a partner and you found issues that you don't trust them, then that is actually the behavior they're going to have for the 50 years of your partnership you're having with us. So that's something that you definitely work out for when you're doing, just setting up the joint venture or partnership with them. And that's a very good indication of what your relationship will be in the future. That's
well, thank you, Isabel, and I think we all learned a new Chinese phrase today that we can practice later on. I'd like to turn it back. We're still running a little short on time, but I'd like to turn it back to what William was just talking about around this idea of cross-border e-commerce. There's a lot of demand for American and other European products from Chinese consumers. And one of the things I thought was interesting when I was speaking with Margaret is some of the work that she's doing to bring California-based products to China. And they might seem a little strange from some of the things you might be used to buying via e-commerce in the US. So I'll turn it over to you to just talk about that.
Thank you. First of all, I've been doing business with China for the last 30 years. So I started with a lot of industrial projects. My last 30 years has been involved with how to clean up the environmental problem in China, water treatment. We have done hundreds of water treatment projects in China, and also to learn about the smart technology of energy efficiency in our lighting side. So it was about 3 years ago that I started to see opportunities of what the Chinese are really looking for, the American lifestyle, the California lifestyle. You see tourists coming in, you see that they really wanted to be able to live and be able to eat the type of product that we have. So especially the growing middle class, they have become more educated, they are more affluent in a way that they can afford to buy products. So I started this company, really called California Center. And it's a private company, but I partner with a lot of programs with the government. I travel with 4 different governors to China the last 20-somewhat years. So, it's really getting a lot of support from the top-down support in China and also in California. So we set up this California Center primarily is to be able to really promote the product in California, to have them to have the California lifestyle. What exactly it is mainly the food product, and also in the entertainment industry, the media, and also the sports. What we call the SME, the sports, media, and entertainment, and the food and the education. That's what we call the Chinese are looking for, the American lifestyle, the California lifestyle. So we have an e-commerce platform they call California Center in Jingdong, that we actually mobilize over 100 different California food suppliers, distributors, from farmers, to wine product, and then we will market it in our California Center. It's amazing that that because the food safety issues in China is a big problem. So when we have a good brand, when we have a good product, talk about healthy food, organic food, from nuts, we sell a lot of almonds, walnuts, to honey, chocolate, to vitamins, to even veggie potato chip. This is something that you can find online and be able to order that, just like you order on Alibaba. And then we were able to work with the suppliers so that we will mobilize a lot of the smaller supplier, which doesn't even think about going to China. But we were able to make them easier to be able to ship the product and put in the warehouse and then pay them back in US dollars. So that system worked, and the big deal is not just online. It's just that we do a lot of institutional sale, meaning that we sell it to the group in China, sell it to an insurance company, sell it to the bank. So that's becoming a very interesting, concept. Of course, that we also do a lot of a sports program. Sports is big in China, from basketball to soccer to hockey, because this is something that we do a lot of exchange program. And I was the first one to bring the NBA game, which is Sacramento and Houston, to China, 2 games. It was like 2008. And look at NBA today, it was a huge. So we're talking about investing into the NCBA game in China, because CBA is open up to privatize. So, the next round that we're going to have California to invest in the CBA, investment into China. So we see that a lot of low-hanging fruits into the consumer traffic, in the middle class, a lot of spending power, and I think that the opportunity is in there, and it's just that you have to find the right niche. China like branding. You have a good brand, you have a good product, it will sell. So.
You're making me hungry.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's really that easy, right? So we've already had everybody talk through and give kind of their point of view. We're running short on time, but I just wanted to ask one last question. I'd say actually to Henry and William, because this is an area that I think is really growing fast in China. The word in Chinese is Wanghong, and it's kind of this idea of internet famous, and the idea that more and more people are kind of these local influencers, and I think Mattel's doing some really interesting things on the ground working with them. And I know William's got a great platform that he's working on. So just quickly, maybe if we could talk briefly about that.
Yeah, sure. I think I alluded to it up front, which was really sort of thinking about activation for our brands as we talk about reframing the category and building the new brands in that market. A lot of the work has been done our traditional activation is obviously through TV drivers, working with well-known celebrities and product placements, but I think in China the market is so vibrant and so amazing to go in different ways, and with sort of KOLs and key influencers having so much traction there and the authenticity they bring. A lot of our marketing programs in the past year have been around identifying the right influencers and personalities and people to work with, and they reside on multiple platforms. They may be a heavy baby tree user, they may be a heavy WeChat user, but working with them to understand their needs and ultimately deliver on those, but explain our story, our brands, our product, and our purpose, so that they can help deliver it in an authentic way. And the KOLs have been important to establishing our brands as we reframe that category around learning and development, and finding, but the key I would say is finding the right ones that actually have the right needs, where our brands can actually and fulfill them. The ones that have kids or starting families that really talk about it daily in their normal lives, and it's no different than sort of YouTube influencers and what you see kind of going on in the U.S. there. I would say that that's a little bit more commercialized, I would say, than what's going on in China, and so it's an important part of the strategy, and it's developing every day.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, a KOL, it's based on trust. A key opinion leader is an influencer. And you have celebrities, and then you have internet celebrities like YouTubers in the US, and then you have everyday people, like your friends on Facebook or Instagram. This is, last year was about a $7 billion industry. This year it's 10 to 12. Some guys are saying 15 billion for next year, but influencers are a much bigger market in China than they would be in the US because of the trust that they bring. And the issue is monetization. So stars in the US on YouTube, they get a tiny fraction, little small money. Most celebrities in the US don't really, as far as I can tell, get paid much of anything. Facebook cuts them out, Instagram cuts them out, they just get crumbs. In China, the influencers can actually get paid a percentage of the sales that they drive. And the sales are generally actual commerce sales. The amount of e-commerce in China as a percentage of total commerce overall is double that of the US. So this is very, very, very powerful, where you can have a normal person share a product that they love, that they already own, and if their friends buy it, they can get 5, 10, 15%. And so we've invested in a couple companies that actually measure this, because as with YouTubers, there's a lot of fans and then there's a lot of fake fans, and measurement is key. So knowing which of the thousands and millions of influencers are the right influencers for you, that's one of the things that we've tried to solve with data and machine learning. But it's a trend that's leading. Think about last thing, you have Google. Google makes all their money on advertising, display advertising. In China, the click-through rates on that, people who actually engage with ads are very, very low, maybe 0.1%. People don't trust it. But when you have your friend or somebody who you trust pushing something or promoting something, not only is it not seen as okay, but it's also seen as something that you can trust. If they're willing to put their name behind it, then it's probably okay for you. And so when you're going to China, you have to think about trust. How do you build that trust? Because they don't know who you are.
That's great, William. And I'll give 30 seconds to you just for one final comment.
Really, really final comment, because Joel sort of mentioned earlier, I just want to sort of wrap up on like BAT, which is Baidu, Google of China. A is Alibaba, is Amazon plus eBay plus PayPal combined. And Tencent, which is Zynga plus Facebook plus WhatsApp combined. But there's a new platform, not just BAT, it's TMD. And you can sort of make fun of it as Tamada, but anyway, that really means T is Toutiao, which is the news feed that come out with another app called Toutiao. M is Meituan, sort of like Groupon, and DD, as I mentioned, is sort of like Uber of China. So these are sort of the new generation platform. If you're thinking about, if you go to China, what are some of the things that you should really play and think about on, maybe, I don't know if they want to partner with you, but you definitely need to pay attention. So.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys. You've learned a lot about Chinese consumers, partnering with them, working with influencers, cross-border e-commerce. There's a lot to digest, and I'm sure you could probably speak to each person for a few hours, but that's all we have for right now, and feel free to speak to people afterwards. Thank you very much.